Hey guys, it's Bales. I'm at DraftKings and going to analyze a couple lineups from the Wildcat, which was I believe, $333 entry, or around 4,600 teams in it. I had 13, and I'll review the top lineup and the bottom lineup in terms of points. I cashed, I believe, 8 of the 13. A bunch of them just snuck in just a few points above the bubble, so got kind of lucky there, and really only had one lineup that had any sort of upside that finished 36th. So that's the lineup here. It was Andrew Luck, who I didn't pair with any Colts receivers actually, and that was the situation. I'll do that occasionally with it has to be a quarterback that I think can run the ball, can definitely score with his legs. Luck isn't the prototype like a Tyrod or Russell Wilson, who isn't running as much, so not as much him anymore, or a Cam Newton, who runs a ton of touchdowns into the end zone. So for the most part, I had luck. When I had a lot of luck, and I had him with Hilton and a bit of Moncrief. But occasionally I would do this, and so no stack there. I had Melvin Gordon, who I had more than the field of. He was in 19.1. This is one of the few lineups that I didn't have Sharkandrick West, who I had, I think, also maybe more than the field, or roughly the same, maybe 50 to 60% of lineups, which was a disaster, but I still think that was the right call. But I used Melvin in conjunction with the Chargers, and that correlation did work out. Melvin obviously was crazy on the ground, 196 rushing yards. Chargers were up, and then facing a quarterback in Mariota, who I think is he's not taking as many sacks as he did last year. Last year he took a sack on like 9% of his dropbacks, or I think 9.6. And this year it's only 4, so he's getting a lot better at not taking sacks. But he still throws some stupid passes at times when they're down and force it in, and that might actually be increasing the Titans' win probability, as some quarterbacks don't even give their teams a chance to win. But he will be aggressive, and so I thought that was a good situation. So you can see it. The perfect example of why the points that a defense gives up aren't really all that important. The Chargers scored 14 points, really good for a defense, 14 fantasy points, but they allowed 35 points to the Titans. So how many points they're going to allow a defense is a pretty minimal concern to me. Even the Vegas projected implied total, I care much more about the spread for a defense, and that they're going to be up late in the game. I think that's the most important thing. So probably a situation where you can get the best balance of a value, or a good spot for a defense, and low ownership, like I think we had here with the Chargers at 5.4%, is when a team is projected to actually allow a lot of points, but there's just going to be a lot of points in the game, so they're probably still going to be up. So some of those high-scoring games, the favorite on especially relatively big favorites, 6-7 points, but still allowed to, or still projected to allow maybe 23, 24 points. There's such a strong correlation between implied points allowed, or projected to be allowed, and ownership, when I think it should actually be more closely linked to the spread than it is. So I care about that, and then getting after the passer, like I said. So that's primarily what I look at with a defense, and I thought it was a good correlation play with Gordon there. Latavius was maybe my most underrated player going into the week. I've created these trends that I've told you guys about that more or less try to predict ownership, and then balance it with value. And I thought that this was a really underrated spot for Latavius. Broncos run defense maybe hasn't been quite as good lately, or they're funneling people to the run, where it's not a terrible spot for certain types of backs, and the Raiders showing that they're going to use Latavius a ton, and he can catch the ball. I just thought it's not the top. He wasn't the top value probably on the week or anything like that, but at 3.1%, I thought was really good, and he's 4K. So in conjunction with Latavius, when you roster him, you're able to get someone like Antonio, for example, who was a complete disaster almost the entire game, and I think I saw some people say that Antonio owners lucked out, but I think that that's the entire point, that he is so safe. Even he's a guy that I hate Roethlisberger on the road, but Antonio is almost just as good on the road. Roethlisberger just continues to get the ball to him no matter what, and so this was garbage time. But predicting that is part of fantasy. So I think that those situations where owners quote unquote get lucky are you just want to put yourself in that position where you can get lucky too. So I don't know, that doesn't make it a good play, but I didn't think the reasoning of him getting lucky because the points came later in the game really made too much sense. Jarvis Landry, on the other hand, I thought was a stupid play. I didn't like him going into the week that much, and just got suckered into the matchup a bit. And it's tough to say how good of a receiver Jarvis Landry is. I certainly don't think he's very valuable to an NFL offense, not getting up the field, and potentially not scoring a bunch long term. So he's kind of the opposite of the typical receiver I would roster. And at 19.3%, that was not good for me. So that I think was a poor call on my part. And really, I think I need to, and as you'll see in my worst lineup, need to stick more to rostering the types of players who generally are going to lead to tournament upside, and that was not one of them. And you sort of I've said every lineup is just one little piece of a bigger portfolio. So if we go through all of my lineups, you'll see not much Landry. This is probably the only Landry lineup, but so it is a small piece of the portfolio. But I still think there's better spots. One of them was, I thought, Golden Tate, who did get a little bit. He obviously had that big play in overtime, the touchdown. It might have been like 30 yards or something like that. So that would have been roughly, I don't know, a 10-point play. But he still was getting his normal, at least of late and dating back to last year, targets. So he had 10 catches before that, 1.9%. So he was in terms of those trends that I use for tournaments, he was top among receivers, and Latavius was top among running backs. And it's always difficult because those feel like not super sharp plays to me. They don't feel like if I didn't create that model more or less, I think that's not, I wouldn't really roster those guys, or I would have somewhat minimal exposure like the field. So it's always a balance between trying to recognize, okay, I have these certain biases, and these guys are actually in good spots, and I need to recognize that, versus well, the model has blind spots too, and it's not accounting for this. It's not accounting for the fact that the big one is sometimes our projections will account for changes in workload, but if you create certain trends, they if they don't incorporate like projected plus minus or some forward-looking stat, then they can be misleading at times, and so you need to look at that. But both of those were spots where I didn't think that was the case, and probably should have gone in on those players even more than I did. Latavius, I was particularly scared of, and so if I had rostered him as much as Gordon, it would have been a really profitable week. I was up just a little bit on the week, by the way. And Golden Tate I did have a lot of, so that was good. I think I had maybe 35 or 40% Golden Tate, so that worked out. It wasn't a huge week for him, but definitely good. Pitta, 6.8%. Don't really know what to say there. I had a good amount of him, 20% maybe, and Yeah, it's just a matter of him getting a bunch of targets of late, and didn't work out in this game. Michael Thomas, I've been rostering almost every single week, and now I think it's going to be probably still going to roster him because I think he's really good, and he's basically their one now. But just really, yeah, I think he's really talented. But he's certainly on everyone's radar now. So a lot of the value that I was getting before in rostering him in terms of it paying off because he was low owned is going to be not that great. And even heading into, I mean, I think most sharp players were very aware of him, and you can see he was at 17.9%. I thought he should be higher. He was my top receiver exposure, I think. So I hit on the receivers pretty well this week, and then missed on a couple guys. West being one of them, obviously, and that killed me. Pitta being another. But that was the top lineup, scored 183. Bottom lineup, maybe the worst lineup I've created all year. I think that this is actually really bad. So the good plays that I thought I made in this: Zeke, even at 47, would I roster him as much as I did? I had right around half of my lineups with Zeke, so didn't really benefit too much from it. I still thought it was fine. He's just like, there's only a couple guys where you can count on that workload and that efficiency. I don't know how it's going to be tough to stop him, and especially actually with Dak. I think Dak helps him more than Romo. Running read option is a pretty big thing. So that play was good, or the reasoning behind it was good. I thought that the Rivers reasoning was good as well. Gordon obviously blew up. In hindsight, I should not have played Travis Benjamin. So I went back and looked at Travis Benjamin, and my reasoning for playing him was this 0.3% owned, and same thing with Tyrell. They were both banged up. I thought it was pretty clear Tyrell was going to play. It wasn't that clear that Benjamin was going to play. In hindsight, that was a really bad decision, because if you're going to take a chance on a player who might not be healthy, make sure he's really good. Julio, AJ Green, Mike Evans, those types of players, not Travis Benjamin. Just not. It was a bad play even at 0.3%. So that's a good example of when they say to be contrarian and not stupid, and that was a pretty stupid play. So should have used Gordon, who I did have a lot of. I've been bigger on the in certain offenses, the Chargers being one of them, on the running back receiver stack. So Rivers, Gordon, Tyrell, and I did have some of that. Not here. Should have had that, or put in Gates, who I also had, but I had less. I think Gates might have been 33% in this, and I didn't like him enough at 33%. He was my top value, but I thought at tight end it was just it's not like he's Zeke where we can completely count on his production. He's an old tight end who is probably still pretty good, but I'd much prefer Kelsey, for example, at 5.3, who is also a good tight end in a game that didn't have as much upside, but that's 6 times less ownership. So I did have some Gates. I think maybe 15 to 20%, but ultimately he hurt me. I thought that the Rivers and Zeke plays were okay. I liked Kenny Britt. I had a lot of Kenny Britt, 35, 40%, something like that. He's just a guy who's getting targets. I actually think he's really talented and he can score, and I think he's going to score a bunch. Even in that offense, when they do get down there, he's going to be able to score. So, and very often they're going to be down. At 9.2%, I thought he was going to be lower. So I probably would have limited it a bit had I known it was 9.2. I thought he was going to be like 5. Theo Riddick, I think, was sort of a neutral play. In hindsight, I think there were just some better options, and I probably shouldn't have diversified as much at running back. And you can probably get the things that Theo Riddick offers without going up against a defense as good as the Vikings, which certainly limits the upside of Riddick there. So thought that play was probably slightly poor. Brandon Cooks is just exposure to that game, which was fine, but yeah, I think I should have just gone even more in on Michael Thomas, especially because I knew Cooks was going to be lower because of the price, and he shouldn't be. He should be cheaper now, and I didn't look at Week 10 yet, but he might be moving forward. So the Tyrell play I talked about, I thought Tyrell was fine. There was more evidence that he was healthy than Benjamin, so I was happy with the Tyrell play. And then Jets, maybe the worst defense decision I've made all year. Yeah, don't even want to talk about that one. So yeah, that is. Oh, last thing on I used PFF to look at Benjamin. Benjamin had, I think, 1 catch for 5 yards. He played 7 snaps. So I said I went back and looked at our news, looked at Roto World. There wasn't really. It was just that he was active. There wasn't any great evidence that he was going to be on a snap count as far as I could tell. So I guess others maybe obviously made a better decision than I did with that one. So yeah, that was that and the Jets were 2 of the worst plays I've made this year. So yeah, and last thing I'll say is yeah, PFF and Roto World and everything. They have a great matchups page. I use it in conjunction with our matchups page. So I use a lot of different sources, just like anyone else. I think FantasyLabs is the best. I think we have the best tools and data. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think that you can and should utilize everything possible to make good decisions. So so just limiting yourself to one source. If you do it, it should be Labs, I think, but that doesn't necessarily make sense. You should utilize everything at your disposal. So, yep, those are my good and bad lineups from Week 9, and good luck in Week 10.